Today I visit the last remaining back-to-back courthouses left in the UK. At one point, millions of working people lived in homes like these. Come with me to what I think is without a doubt one of the most interesting and important places to visit in Birmingham. This week I am staying really close to home. I've driven 20 minutes to get here and I am in Birmingham city centre. You can hear from the accent, that's where I'm from. And I am going to be visiting the back-to-back houses here. Now, my background is in social history. I went to university and I studied social history. So history in general, and particularly the history of working people, is really close to my heart. I have always wanted to go here, and despite living so close, I've never been. These are the last remaining back-to-back houses in the United Kingdom. There were millions of these places, and millions of working class people had hard lives. My own mother was born in one of these back-to-back houses, not these ones, some ones just up the road. Most of them were cleared towards the end of the 1960s and 1970s. These ones remained. They were built in 1830 and they were lived in until the 1960s. They're owned by the National Trust. I've got a handy National Trust card, so entrance is going to be free for me, and it's a guided tour, so I'm not sure how much I'm going to be able to film, but I'm going to do my best. This is a place I'm really excited to go, and I think a lot of you watching will definitely have family members back in the past that lived in places similar to this. So let's go and have a look and get on with the video. The Birmingham back-to-backs are situated right in Birmingham city centre, minutes away from the famous Hippodrome Theatre. It's the last example of court back-to-back houses surviving in the UK today. Most of these houses were demolished, but due to the shops on the front of these courthouses, these survived until the present day and are the last example of houses like this you can see anywhere in the country. Bookings to the Birmingham back-to-backs are by appointment only. You can book really easily on the National Trust website. My booking wasn't until 12:30, so I took the opportunity to go and have a look at the exhibition that's currently running at the top of the back-to-back houses. These exhibitions are free to anybody who would like to go. Hiya, morning.
We've got 2 free exhibitions at there. You're welcome to have a look around.
Amazing. I want to go look at the drag one. That's why I'm here. Thank you. Wow, these stairs are steep. Ooh. Oh, amazing. This is one of the exhibitions they've got upstairs at the moment, and this is part of Birmingham's kind of more recent pop culture. So Carn and Bell was a shop that was in Birmingham. I wish I was old enough to have gone, because I'd have loved it. And it was kind of the centre of the punk and new romantic movement in Birmingham, and then also the wider UK. Boy George worked there. He often mentions it. So there's a lovely exhibition about this at the moment at the top of the back-to-back houses. From up here as well, you can get a really good view of the court down below. Somebody would have lived here and looked out at this view day after day, down onto the court down there. So I'll be going there next when my slot starts at 12:40. Definitely worth coming up here, even if you're not necessarily interested in the exhibitions, because you can still see some of the original features. The floor is so creaky, and you can get a really good idea about the size of these rooms, the rooms in which people were living without the crowds that I'm afraid I think are going to happen during the guided tour. But they've still got the original fireplaces. And again, I always just love looking out of windows and thinking, who's looked out of this window and what did they see? You know, that view has changed, but that building there would have been the same. So who stood here in the past and looked outside this window, and what did they see? Just a word on accessibility. The stairs are really, really steep. And that was because they were trying to get as many people in to a smaller space as possible. So they didn't want a big staircase because that was just going to take a ton of room. So if you do have accessibility problems, you might want to call the National Trust in advance and ask some questions, because these stairs are like ladders. I didn't know that exhibition was there. That was a bonus. And I think it's really nice to see the National Trust doing things that are a little bit more up to date, because, yeah, the society that we lived in not that long ago needs to be remembered too. And I think, you know, not enough people know who Patty Bell is. If you don't, Google her. She was amazing. And I think that is a really nice local thing to have here, which is a bit of a difference from the norm. So it's nearly 12:40. Just about to go in for my guided tour. There's 8 on the tour. It's going to be a bit tight in those rooms. I'm quite nervous. Those stairs, oh my God, my legs. They hurt my knees, man. I mean, imagine living, that's your day today, you know. So we're going to go in for the actual tour now. I'm probably going to have to do kind of silent filming and do voiceovers when I get home. That's the plan. So let's see. We've got so many seagulls in Birmingham these days. They know where to come and get their food. Right, I'm going to go in and I'll film what I can and see you on the other side. The tour starts by meeting your guide, who I must say was absolutely fantastic, taking you through this alleyway into this incredibly, meticulously restored court of back-to-back houses. At some point, 66 people were living in this court, sharing 2 toilets with no running water, no electricity. And although the houses now have been restored and seem really quite clean, you really get a sense of how it would have been to live here. Back-to-back court housing was a type of urban housing built mainly in the Midlands and the North during the 19th century. This was to accommodate the huge amount of people migrating to the cities during the Industrial Revolution. Back-to-back courthouses features a group of houses built around a central courtyard that contains the shared toilet and the laundry facilities. Back-to-backs aren't like terraced houses. Terraced housing was often made up of homes containing 2 rooms upstairs and 2 downstairs. A back-to-back house is usually only 1 room deep. If you imagine a terraced house split down the middle by a wall, you'd get a back-to-back. One house looked out onto the street, while the other house behind it looked out onto the courtyard. It was actually more expensive to have a house that looked out onto the street because there was a better chance of getting some fresh air. The houses were quickly and crudely built, and most of the walls are only 1 brick thick. That means that even though you're separated from your neighbours, you could hear, smell and experience everything that was going on in the house next door. Some of these houses would have up to 12 children living in one residence, and some of the occupants of this court even took on lodgers. At one point, half the population of Birmingham was living in houses like this, and this was replicated in cities all over the UK. I can't really explain how I felt walking around these houses. There was a definite smell in the air, something I'd never smelt before. So when I came home, I did some research and I actually saw a quote from a lady who lived here saying that the smell never leaves you. And when she came back after they'd been refurbished, she said it still smelt the same. So I guess even here you're smelling the past. I love this part of the building where the National Trust have left it how it was found. It gives you a much better impression of the dilapidated state of these houses that people were living in right into the 1960s. There's also a photograph of the last resident here, and you can see what a terrible state the housing was in when she was still living here in 1966. The houses are set in 3 different time periods. This first house is set in 1840 when a Jewish family lived here. The head of the household was a clockmaker, and you still get a real sense of how this family lived. The second house is set in the 1870s. A family called the Oldfields lived here during the 1860s with their 10 children. So 12 people altogether lived here. Herbert was a glass worker and his main income was making glass eyes. I had a real sense of sadness in this house, and when I got home and did further research, several of the children had died here from consumption and illnesses caused by poor living conditions. The residents in these houses did everything they could in terrible circumstances, but sometimes the realities of poor housing, poor diets, and poor health care just meant that people didn't survive into adulthood. The third house is set in the 1930s, and this is actually my favourite house. It's based on a man, a Mr. Mitchell, whose family had lived in this court for 95 years. He was also one of the last residents to leave. This house is set up like a bachelor pad of the time, and it just had a really nice feeling, and I just really enjoyed looking around this house in particular. In this house, there's a fantastic example of something that the National Trust decided not to remove. This lino floor is original, and it's incredible that it lasted so long. The man who lived in this house was well known for entertaining everybody in the courtyard with his accordion. So they've left this room as a tribute for that, and I think that's really sweet. As you exit the houses, you have the real privilege of being able to see a shop just stopped in time. In the 1970s, this was a really famous tailor shop, and George Saunders, the owner, handed the keys to the National Trust and just left it as it was, and they've restored it impeccably to this day. It's a fantastic example of somebody from the Windrush generation who came to Birmingham and made a real success of their lives. This shop was actually one of my favourite parts of this visit. I just thought it was absolutely fascinating seeing something locked in a time capsule, and you don't get many experiences to do that. This part is not highly curated, it's just as it was. When you leave the tailor shop, you then have the opportunity to explore the courtyard itself. This was where the toilets were situated, and there's two toilets set up, one from the late 1800s and one into the modern times with a flush. You can also look round the communal washroom where people would do their washing weekly and was a real hive of activity in the courtyard. It really was such an interesting, immersive experience, and the guide just gave you fact after fact after fact. It was absolutely fantastic. I usually don't really enjoy guided tours because I prefer to have a look around myself, but the guide was so informative and so interesting, really involving everybody on the tour. We actually had some people on the tour who were from Germany. They weren't even speaking the language, and everybody was involved. It was really interesting, and I highly recommend coming to take a look at the Birmingham back to backs if ever you're in the area. You're very likely, if you come on a tour, to be touring with somebody who lived in a house like this. That gives it an even more interesting twist. You can go and look around a big stately home, but it's unlikely you're going to bump into the Earl who's going to give you a first-hand experience of living there. But with the back-to-backs, this is a real piece of true working class history that everybody can enjoy. I thoroughly enjoyed that. What I didn't enjoy is I just came out and I thought, I'll have a coffee, bit parched, £4.30. £4.30 in Birmingham for a coffee. Oh, I need to shake my head about that. I really enjoyed that. I thought that was absolutely fantastic. Everything I wanted it to be, really. The tour was so good. 90 minutes, and I think that is a bargain, considering if you're a National Trust member it's free. If you're not a National Trust member, I think it's £10, but even still, that is a bit of a bargain, unlike this coffee. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm going somewhere else really exciting tomorrow, with a real family connection again in Birmingham, because, you know, I've got to take advantage of being a Brummie and living in this great city, because at the end of the day these videos are costing me a fortune to make. Anyway, I will see you all on the next one. I hope you enjoyed it. Please comment, like, and if you could subscribe, I'd love you forever. Until the next one, bye.